The story begins on an ordinary evening, the kind that rarely asks for attention, when nothing dramatic seems scheduled to happen. The streetlights had just flickered on, not because it was fully dark, but because cities prefer to be early rather than careful. A man named Aaron walked at a steady pace, one hand wrapped around the strap of his backpack, the other holding his phone at chest level, not scrolling, just present enough to look busy. He wasn't in a rush. He rarely was anymore. Life had taught him that speed often borrowed from tomorrow. Aaron was a single father, though that fact didn't announce itself in his posture or clothes. It lived quietly in the way he checked the time, the way his shoulders stayed squared even when tired, and in the way his thoughts kept looping back to dinner plans, homework questions, and whether he'd remembered to leave the porch light on. His daughter was staying with a neighbor for an extra hour that night, giving him time to walk instead of drive, to think instead of react. He liked walking. It gave him a sense of sequence, of cause and effect, something he had learned to respect deeply. As he passed a small convenience store, he noticed a woman ahead of him, maybe 10 or 12 steps away, walking faster than necessary. There was nothing obvious at first, no shouting, no chaos, but Aaron felt a subtle tension in the air, the kind you don't learn from movies but from paying attention to people. Two men were trailing her. Not close enough to touch, not far enough to ignore. They weren't masked, weren't aggressive in a visible way. They were just present, adjusting their pace to hers, drifting slightly wider on the sidewalk than needed. Aaron didn't jump to conclusions. He'd trained himself out of that habit years ago. He observed instead. He noticed the woman's shoulders rising and falling too quickly, the way her head tilted as if listening behind her without wanting to turn. He noticed the men's hands, empty, casual, but restless. At this point in the story, nothing had happened yet, and that matters. Most moments that change us start like this, unremarkable, undecided, still waiting for someone to choose how to show up. Aaron slowed his walk, not to intervene, but to create space. He positioned himself so that he was no longer directly behind the group but angled, visible in their peripheral vision. He didn't stare. He didn't announce himself. He simply existed more clearly. When one of the men glanced back and noticed him, their eyes met for less than a second. That was enough. The woman turned down a narrower side street, one that led toward a row of older apartment buildings. The men followed. Aaron paused. This was the moment most people later describe as instinct, but instinct is often just experience speaking softly. Aaron exhaled, not dramatically, just enough to settle his body. He turned down the same street, not fast, not slow, and kept a respectful distance. A few steps in, the tension sharpened. The woman stopped abruptly, pretending to check her bag. One of the men spoke, not loudly, not threateningly, but with a tone that crossed a line without naming it. Aaron didn't hear the words clearly, and he didn't need to. He stepped forward then, closing the distance, and spoke in a calm, neutral voice, as if addressing a neighbor. He said something ordinary, asked if anyone had dropped a set of keys. The interruption was enough to reset the moment. The men turned fully now, surprised not by aggression but by presence. Aaron stood with relaxed posture, hands visible, voice steady. He wasn't there to fight. He was there to interrupt a pattern. That distinction mattered to him. He positioned himself slightly between the woman and the men, not blocking, just existing as a variable they hadn't planned for. The woman took a step back, confusion and relief flickering across her face. One of the men scoffed, muttered something about minding business. Aaron nodded, as if agreeing in principle, while not moving an inch. He didn't escalate. He didn't threaten. He simply held eye contact, calm and unyielding. In that stillness, something shifted. The men hesitated, recalculating. This wasn't fear, it was inconvenience. They hadn't expected resistance that didn't come wrapped in drama. After a few seconds that felt longer than they stepped back, exchanged a look, and walked away, muttering, disappearing into the better-lit end of the street. The woman stood there, stunned, breathing slowly now. She thanked Aaron, her voice shaky but sincere. He nodded, asked if she was okay, offered to walk her a bit farther. She agreed. As they walked, she asked, half joking, how he stayed so calm. Aaron shrugged and said something simple about having responsibilities. It was only later, in casual conversation, when she mentioned how controlled his movements were, how deliberate his voice sounded, that he mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that he had once served in the Navy. He didn't say it with pride or drama. It was just context. The woman stopped walking for a moment, surprised, not because it explained everything, but because it explained nothing supernatural at all. He wasn't a hero from a movie. He was just a man who had learned, long ago, that strength didn't need to announce itself, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show up calmly when everyone else is hoping not to get involved.